Okay, so have you ever noticed how easy it is to let things slip?
Oh, yeah, totally.
When you're busy, I mean. Like life gets crazy and
Yeah.
suddenly you're like, wait, when was the last time I actually like had a real conversation with my partner?
It's so true. It's like you're juggling a million things at once,
Yeah.
and the relationships that matter the most sometimes end up, on the back burner a little bit.
Exactly. And that's like what made me so interested in this whole concept of relationship check-ins.
Oh, interesting.
It's kind of like this idea of just like hitting pause and
I
having this dedicated time to really connect with your partner.
Yeah,
And that's actually like the title of the guide we're looking at for this deep dive, right?
right. Relationship check-ins. It's kind of like a relationship tune-up.
Yes.
Exactly. If you think about it,
Yeah.
it's making sure things are running smoothly.
And what I found really interesting about this guide is
Mm.
that it emphasizes the intentional and structured part of these check-ins.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, we happen to be in the same room, let's chat.
Right. It's not just casual chit-chat while you're both like scrolling through Instagram.
Yeah, totally.
It's about, setting aside time, being intentional about it, having a structure and a purpose for the conversation.
Okay, so then walk me through this. Like, what does a relationship check-in actually look like?
So the guide, it suggests a few different things. First off, like
Okay.
finding a dedicated time,
Mhm.
making sure there are no distractions.
So put the phones away?
Yeah, phones away, TV off,
Got it.
kids are occupied.
Okay, make it a priority.
Yeah. And it also suggests different types of check-ins, actually. Like you could have
Oh, interesting.
weekly check-ins just to, connect and see how things are going.
Yeah, yeah.
You can have like specific conflict resolution check-ins
Okay.
if there's something you need to address.
That makes sense.
And you could even have like milestone check-ins,
Ooh, I like that.
for anniversaries or birthdays or yeah.
Just to sort of reflect.
Exactly, to reflect on like where you've been and where you're going as a couple.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the what, right? Like what it looks like, but why? Convince me. Why bother with all this?
Okay, so there are so many benefits. The guide talks about like improved communication,
Right?
increased trust, and even being able to handle conflicts better because
Right.
you're addressing them early on.
Catching them before they become
Exactly, before they become big blowouts.
Oh, I can see how this would be a game changer.
Right.
Imagine like actually being able to talk about those little annoyances
Yes.
before they become these huge arguments.
And it's not just about preventing those blowups either.
Okay.
It can also like seriously deepen your emotional intimacy.
Ooh. Okay. Now we're getting to the good stuff. Tell me more about that.
All right, so think about it. When you have that dedicated time, right?
Yeah.
To really talk openly and honestly,
Mhm.
it creates the sense of safety and vulnerability with your partner. It allows you to share your thoughts, feelings, fears, even without feeling judged.
Oh, that's so important.
Right.
That feeling of being able to like truly be yourself.
Exactly. And when you feel seen and heard by your partner,
Yeah.
it just boosts that trust and security, which, let's be honest, is kind of the foundation of any healthy relationship.
It really is. I'm already starting to see how this could be so powerful.
And there's actually some really fascinating psychology behind all of this, too.
Ooh, okay, lay it on me.
Have you ever heard of attachment theory?
Of course. That's like the theory about how our childhood experiences shape our relationship patterns, right?
Exactly. And, people with secure attachment styles are usually more comfy with, like,
Right.
intimacy and vulnerability.
Yeah.
While folks with, say, anxious or avoidant styles, they might struggle a bit more with that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing this is where the check-ins come in.
You got it. Check-ins can actually help people, even with those less secure attachment styles,
Oh, wow.
to build more trust and intimacy over time.
So it's like it can actually help you like rewire those patterns.
In a way, yeah. By showing up consistently for those check-ins, even when it feels a little awkward or uncomfortable at first,
Yeah.
you're basically reinforcing that sense of security and reliability,
Mhm.
and that can seriously impact the relationship for the better.
I'm starting to see how powerful this can be. It's not just about talking. It's about intentionally building that stronger, emotional foundation.
Exactly. And you know what? It's not just psychology that backs this up.
Oh, really?
Sociology has something to say about this too. Like, have you heard of social exchange theory?
Vaguely. Remind me.
Okay, so it basically says that relationships, they work best when there's this balance of give and take.
Right. Like both people feel like they're contributing and getting something out of it.
Exactly. When it feels fair and equal, the relationship tends to flourish.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And check-ins, they give you this structured way to actually, like, check in on that balance.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. You can talk about your needs and expectations,
Yeah.
address any imbalances.
Right.
And it just makes sure both partners feel heard and understood.
So we're not just complaining. We're making sure the foundation of the relationship is solid.
Exactly. And when those needs are met,
Yeah.
it creates this positive feedback loop.
Oh, cool.
Both partners are happier and more satisfied,
Makes sense.
which makes them want to invest even more in the relationship.
It's like this win-win situation. Okay, I'm convinced. The why is solid.
Good.
But now I need to know, like, how do we actually make this work in real life?
That's a great question. And luckily, the guide, it has some really practical tips.
Perfect. Let's hear them.
Okay, so first
Yeah.
off, scheduling.
Scheduling.
Yeah, like literally put it on the calendar.
Why are you serious about this?
I am. Because otherwise, it's just too easy to, like, let it slide.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Life gets in the way.
Totally.
So you got to prioritize it.
Okay, I'm writing this down. Schedule it.
Yes. And then choose a good spot, somewhere with no distractions.
Right, like we were saying before. Phones away, TV off.
Exactly. You want to create that space where you can really focus on each other.
It's almost like creating this sacred space, right?
Yes. A little bubble where the outside world can't intrude.
I love that. Okay, what else?
All right. The guide also talks about, like, setting some ground rules for your check-ins.
Ooh, ground rules. I like that.
Yeah. So things like, active listening.
Okay.
Speaking from the I perspective.
Right, like I feel instead of you always.
Yes, exactly.
Go.
And trying to avoid blame or criticism. It's about creating this safe and respectful space.
It makes sense. It's hard to open up when you feel like you're going to get attacked,
Exactly. And these check-ins, they're not about keeping score.
Right, not about who's right or wrong.
Exactly. It's about understanding each other.
Yeah.
And finding solutions that actually work for both of you.
Like we're on the same team here.
Exactly. It's all about collaboration, not competition.
I love that. All right, I got to be honest.
What's up?
I can be a bit of a conflict avoider.
Oh.
Like the idea of actually scheduling time to bring up issues,
Yeah.
it's a little intimidating, to be honest.
I totally get it. But here's the thing. Those conflict resolution check-ins,
Yeah.
they can actually make things easier in the long run.
Okay, now I'm curious. How?
Because it shifts how you view conflict. Instead of seeing it as this, like, scary thing,
Mm-hmm.
you can reframe it as a chance to, like,
Yeah.
learn and grow together.
Oh, I like that. So it's not a threat to the relationship. It's a chance to understand each other better.
Exactly. It's about seeing those difficult conversations as opportunities.
Wow. Oh,
And the guide even has some tips for navigating those conversations.
okay, good, because I need those.
So one thing it emphasizes is focusing on the current issue.
Okay, stay present.
Yeah. Don't bring up every fight you've ever had.
Right, no baggage allowed.
Exactly. And another tip, use those I statements we talked about.
Right, right.
It helps avoid that blame game.
Instead of saying you always do this, you'd say, I feel hurt when this happens.
Perfect. You got it.
Okay, that makes sense. It feels less accusatory and more like we're trying to solve a problem together.
Exactly. And remember, the goal isn't to fix everything in one sitting.
Right.
It's about progress, one conversation at a time.
Building those communication muscles.
Yes, exactly. You're creating this culture of open and honest dialogue.
I'm loving this. Okay, so we got the what, the why, the how.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, next, I think we should dive into how these check-ins can help with those, like, bigger relationship issues.
Oh, yeah, the tough stuff.
The stuff that can sometimes, really rock the boat.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so let's talk about those patterns that sometimes pop up in relationships. Like, have you ever noticed how...
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you get stuck in these loops.
Yes, those recurring arguments, those resentments that just keep bubbling up.
Exactly. And you're like, didn't we already talk about this?
Right. And those weekly check-ins, they can help in the moment, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Okay, so we're not just addressing the symptoms. We're trying to find the root cause.
Exactly. And those conflict resolution check-ins,
Yeah.
they can be really helpful for that.
Okay, how so?
Because they let you go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
You can explore, like, why those conflicts keep happening.
Right, figure out the underlying patterns.
Yes. And then come up with strategies to break those cycles.
It's like we're doing this relationship inventory.
Totally. You're taking stock of what's working, what's not,
Yes.
and then figuring out how to make adjustments.
Love it.
And remember, those adjustments, they might need some compromise.
Right. It's not about one person being right or wrong.
Exactly. It's about finding a solution that works for both of you.
And having those check-ins, that structure, it gives us a safe space to have those conversations.
Exactly. You can express your needs, you can listen, and you can work together towards the same goal.
It's about balancing those individual needs with the needs of the relationship as a whole.
You got it. And sometimes those conversations, they might highlight some deeper issues that maybe you need some extra help with.
Right, like maybe it's time to see a therapist.
Exactly. And that's okay. Seeking that support, it's actually a sign of strength. It shows that you're both committed to making the relationship work.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, let's be honest, you just need that outside perspective.
Totally. Sometimes you're too close to the situation to see it clearly.
Right. And a therapist can help you see things in a new way, break free from those old patterns.
It's like having a relationship coach.
Exactly. Cheering you on and giving you the tools you need.
I love that.
And even if you do decide to see a therapist, those check-ins, they're still so important.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Because you're continuing that communication, that connection.
They become like a supplement to therapy.
Exactly. They reinforce those new skills and patterns that you're working on.
And as you keep doing those check-ins, making adjustments along the way, your relationship, it just keeps getting stronger and more resilient.
Exactly. You're building this foundation
Yeah.
of trust, intimacy, open communication.
They can withstand anything life throws at you.
Beautifully said. And hey, don't forget, this guide we're talking about, it even mentions some resources to check out. Like, have you heard of Gottman's 7 principles for making marriage work?
Oh, of course. That's like the relationship Bible.
Right. It's packed with so much good stuff. And if you prefer something a little more like structured, there's even apps now. Like, have you heard of Lasting?
No, tell me about it.
It's an app that actually walks you through those check-ins.
Whoa, cool.
It's like a virtual relationship coach.
Amazing. Okay, so we're wrapping up this part of the deep dive.
Yeah.
What's the key takeaway here?
I think the key takeaway is this. The most important resource you have in your relationship is each other.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Right. It all comes back to that commitment to showing up, to listening, to working together.
Creating the relationship that you both want.
Exactly. And even those small, consistent actions.
Like these check-ins.
Like these check-ins.
They can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. It's like that quote, the greatest things are done by a series of small things brought together.
So true. Okay, so we've learned a lot about relationship check-ins.
We have.
But I think it's time to shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And explore how we can use these check-ins to tackle those like bigger systemic issues
Ooh, good idea.
that sometimes come up in relationships, you know?
Yeah, the things that can really test us.
All right, let's do it. So tell me.
Okay, so you know how sometimes those problems in a relationship, they're not just like random things. It's like they're coming from these deeper patterns.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Dynamics that have been going on for a while, maybe.
Like those same arguments keep happening.
Yes.
Or those resentments just keep bubbling up.
Yeah. 6. They're like, didn't we already talk about this? Right. And those weekly check-ins, they can help in the moment, right? They can. But sometimes it feels like you need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. You got it. Like you're addressing the symptoms, but not the root cause.
Exactly. And that's where I'm guessing those conflict resolution check-ins could really shine.
Exactly. They can help you dive deeper, explore why those conflicts keep popping up.
Okay.
Figure out the underlying patterns, and then like strategize how to break those negative cycles.
It's like we're doing this relationship inventory, right? Taking stock.
Totally.
What's working, what's not.
What needs to be adjusted.
I love that.
Oh.
Okay, so we're getting to the root of the problem. But what then?
Well, then it's about making adjustments.
Right.
And remember, those adjustments might require some compromise.
Okay.
Some flexibility from both partners.
It's a two-way street.
Exactly. It's not about one person being right or wrong. It's about finding a solution that works for both of you.
And having those check-ins, that structure, it gives us a safe space to actually have those hard conversations.
Exactly. You can express your needs. You can listen to each other.
Right. Without it turning into a fight.
And you can actually work together towards the same goal.
It's about balancing those individual needs
Yeah.
with the needs of the relationship.
You got it. You nailed it.
Okay. But sometimes those conversations might reveal like some really deep issues, right? The things that maybe like we need professional help with.
Right. Sometimes those check-ins might highlight areas where, like, seeing a therapist would be beneficial.
Okay.
And there's absolutely no shame in that.
Totally.
Actually, it shows that you're both committed to putting in the work,
Right.
to making the relationship thrive.
Like you're saying, we care enough to get help.
Exactly. And sometimes, let's be honest,
Yeah.
you just need that outside perspective,
Right.
someone who's not emotionally involved.
Right.
To help you see things more clearly.
Because when you're in it, it's hard to see the forest for the trees, right?
Exactly. And a therapist can help you break free from those old patterns.
They're like a relationship coach.
Exactly. Giving you the tools and guidance you need.
I love that analogy.
And you know what? Even if you do decide to see a therapist,
Yeah.
those check-ins, they're still so important.
Of course.
They become like a complement to the therapy.
No, that makes sense.
They help you continue that communication
Right.
and reinforce those new skills and patterns you're learning.
It's like a double whammy of relationship goodness.
Exactly. And as you keep investing in those check-ins
Yeah.
and make adjustments along the way, your relationship,
Yeah.
it just becomes stronger and more resilient.
It's like you're building this foundation
Yes.
that can withstand anything life throws at you.
A foundation of trust,
Mhm.
intimacy, open communication.
Oh, I love that. Okay, this is all so good. And I know the guide mentioned some other resources too, right?
It does. It talks about Gottman's 7 principles for making marriage work.
Oh, that's a classic.
Right. It's like the relationship Bible. So many good insights.
It really is. And then are there any other
Yeah.
more modern resources?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's actually apps now.
Oh, wow. Apps for relationships.
I know. It's amazing. There's one called Lasting.
Okay.
And it walks you through those check-in conversations.
Whoa, like a virtual relationship coach in your pocket.
Exactly.
So cool. Okay, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the key takeaway for you?
For me, it's that the most important resource you have in your relationship is each other.
Ah, that's beautiful.
It's true. It all comes back to that commitment, to showing up, to listening, to working together.
So creating the relationship you both want.
Exactly. And even those small, consistent actions, like those check-ins,
Yes.
they can make such a huge difference. Absolutely. It's like that saying, the greatest things are done by a series of small things brought together.
I love that. So true. Okay, we've learned so much about relationship check-ins.
We have.
But now, I want to shift gears a bit
Okay, yeah.
and explore how these check-ins can help us with those bigger issues.
Okay.
Those systemic things that can really test a relationship.
Right. The stuff that sometimes, really shakes things up.
All right, you ready to dive in?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, so I think we all know
Yeah.
that sometimes the problems in a relationship, they're not just random isolated things.
Right.
They come from these deeper patterns.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Like those recurring arguments
Oh, is that
or
it?
those resentments that just keep bubbling up.
And you're like, didn't we already talk about this?
Right. Like you feel like you're going in circles.
Exactly. And while those weekly check-ins can be great for handling things in the moment,
Yeah.
sometimes it feels like you need to zoom out
Mm-hmm.
and look at the bigger picture.
You got it. Like you're addressing the symptom,
Mm-hmm.
but not the root cause.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's where those conflict resolution check-ins come in.
Exactly. They can help you dive deeper, explore why those conflicts keep happening,
Okay.
figure out the underlying patterns, and then come up with strategies to break those negative cycles.
So it's like doing this relationship inventory, right?
Totally.
We're taking stock of what's working, what's not.
What needs adjusting?
I love that.
Okay.
So we're getting to the root of the problem. What happens next?
Well, next, it's about making those adjustments, right?
Right.
And remember, those adjustments, they might require some compromise,
Okay.
some flexibility from both
It's
partners.
not about one person being right or wrong.
Exactly. It's about finding a solution
Mm-hmm.
that works for both of you.
And having that structure of those check-ins,
Yeah.
it gives us this safe space to have those hard conversations.
Exactly. It allows you to express your needs, to really listen to each other,
Right.
and to work together towards the same goal.
It's about balancing those individual needs
Mm-hmm.
with the needs of the relationship as a whole.
You nailed it. You totally got it.
Okay, but what about those situations where
Yeah.
the conversations, they might reveal some really deep-seated issues?
Mm-hmm.
Things that, maybe we need professional help with.
Right. Sometimes those check-ins, they
Right.
might highlight some areas where, seeing a therapist could be really helpful.
Okay,
And there's absolutely no shame in that.
totally. It's like a sign of strength, actually.
Exactly. It shows that you're both invested in making this relationship work.
Yeah.
That you care enough to seek that support.
Absolutely. And sometimes you just need that outside perspective, you know?
Totally. It's hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in the thick of it.
Right.
And a therapist can provide that objective viewpoint,
Mm-hmm.
help you see things in a new light.
Yeah. Break free from those old patterns.
Exactly. It's like having a relationship coach.
I love that analogy. It's so true.
Someone to guide you and give you the tools you need.
And even if you do decide to see a therapist, those check-ins, they're still so important.
No, absolutely. They become like a complement to the therapy.
That makes so much sense.
They help you continue that open communication.
Right.
And reinforce those new skills and patterns that you're working on in therapy.
It's like a double whammy of relationship goodness.
Exactly. And as you keep investing in those check-ins, making adjustments along the way, your relationship just gets stronger and more resilient.
You're building this foundation that can withstand anything.
A foundation built on trust, intimacy, and open communication.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Okay, this is all so insightful. And I remember the guide mentioned some other resources we can check out too, right?
It does. It mentions John Gottman's 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work.
Oh, yeah. That's like a classic for a reason.
Right. A relationship Bible.
So many good insights in there.
It's timeless.
It really is. And are there any like more modern resources?
Oh, absolutely. There's actually apps now.
Apps.
Yeah.
For relationships.
Yeah. It's amazing how technology has like integrated into this space.
I know. Okay, tell me about these apps.
So there's one called Lasting. And it basically walks you through those check-in conversations.
Whoa, so it's like a virtual relationship coach.
Exactly. In your pocket.
It's so cool.
I know, right? Okay, so as we wrap up this part of the deep dive, what's the key takeaway for you?
For me, the biggest thing is that the most important resource you have in your relationship is each other.
Ah, that's beautiful.
Right. It all comes back to that commitment. You know, to showing up, to listening, to working together.
To building the relationship you both want.
Exactly. And even those small, consistent actions, like those check-ins, they can make such a huge difference in the long run.
They really can. It's like that saying, the greatest things are done by a series of small things brought together.
That's so true. Okay, we've learned so much about relationship check-ins today.
We have. It's been a great conversation.
But now, I think it's time to shift gears a bit and talk about how we can use these check-ins to tackle some of those bigger issues. Those like systemic things that can really test a relationship.
Right. The stuff that can really shake things up.
You ready to dive in?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, so I think we all know that sometimes those problems in a relationship, they're not just like random isolated incidents.
Right. Like you might have the same argument over and over again.
Exactly.
Or those resentments just keep popping up no matter what. It's like they stem from these deeper patterns.
Yeah, like these dynamics that have been playing out for a while.
Exactly. And while those weekly check-ins, they can help us address those issues in the moment, sometimes we need to step back a bit.
Okay.
And really look at the bigger picture.
So it's not just about putting out fires as they come up. It's about figuring out why those fires keep starting in the first place.
Exactly. Like, what's the root cause here?
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, this is where those conflict resolution check-ins can be super helpful.
Okay, remind me, what are those again?
So remember, we talked about different types of check-ins.
Right.
These are the ones where you specifically set aside time to address a particular issue or conflict.
Okay, got it. So how do those help us see the bigger picture?
Because they allow us to go deeper,
Yeah.
Instead of just focusing on the surface level argument, we can start to explore the underlying reasons why these conflicts keep happening.
So it's like we're doing this deep dive into the conflict itself.
Exactly. It's like a relationship inventory. You're taking stock of like what's working, what's not, and then figuring out
what's next,
how to make those necessary adjustments.
And those adjustments, I'm guessing, they usually involve some compromise.
Oh, absolutely. It's not about one person changing to meet the other person's needs perfectly.
Right.
It's about finding a solution that works for both of you.
It's about meeting somewhere in the middle.
Exactly. And the check-ins, that structure, it gives you that safe space to have those sometimes difficult conversations.
Yeah, because those conversations can be tough.
They can, but when you have that foundation of like respect and open communication,
Right.
it makes it so much easier to navigate those challenges together.
It's like you're saying, hey, we're on the same team here.
Exactly. It's all about collaboration, not competition.
I love that. Okay, so we're getting to the root of the problem. We're having those honest conversations. But what if those conversations reveal, like, some really deep issues?
Ooh, yeah, that can definitely happen.
Right, like things that maybe we need professional help with.
Exactly. Sometimes those check-ins, they might highlight some areas where, maybe seeing a therapist would be really beneficial.
And there's no shame in that, right?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, it's a sign of strength because it shows that you're both committed to making the relationship work.
Right. You care enough to seek that support.
Exactly. And sometimes, we just need that outside perspective. Someone who isn't emotionally invested in the situation.
Right.
To help us see things more clearly.
It's hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in the middle of it.
Exactly. And a therapist can help you, break free from those old patterns.
It can be like a relationship coach almost.
Exactly. They give you the tools and guidance you need.
And even if you decide to see a therapist, those check-ins are still important, right?
Oh, they're super important. They become like a complement to the therapy.
Right, they keep that communication going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they help you practice those new skills that you're working on in therapy.
It's like a double dose of relationship goodness.
Exactly. And as you keep investing in those check-ins, making adjustments along the way, your relationship just gets stronger and more resilient.
It's like building a foundation that can withstand anything life throws at you.
A foundation of trust, intimacy, and open communication.
Love that.
Yeah.
So powerful. I remember the guide, it mentions some other resources that can be helpful, right?
It does. It talks about John Gottman's book, 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work.
Oh, yeah. That's like the relationship Bible.
It's a classic for a reason, packed with insights.
So many good tips in there.
It's timeless.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for something a little more structured, there's even apps now.
Oh, wow. Apps for relationships. That's so cool.
Go. Technology is amazing.
Okay, tell me about these apps.
So there's one called Lasting.
Oh, okay.
And it basically walks you through those check-in conversations.
Whoa, so it's like a virtual relationship coach in your pocket.
Exactly. Isn't that cool?
That's amazing. All right, so we're wrapping up this part of the deep dive.
Yeah.
What's the biggest takeaway for you?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the greatest resource you have in your relationship is each other.
Oh, I love that.
Right.
It all comes back to that commitment. To showing up, to listening, to working together.
To creating the relationship that you both want.
Exactly. And even those small, consistent actions.
Like those check-ins.
It
can make a world of difference.
It really can. It's like that saying, the greatest things are done by a series of small things brought together.
So true. And on that note, I think it's time for us to shift gears again.
Okay. Where are we headed now?
I think it's time to talk about how we can use these check-ins to navigate those really big challenges.
Okay, the heavy stuff.
The things that can really put a relationship to the test.
You ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right. So tell me, have you ever noticed how sometimes those big problems in a relationship,
they're not just random, isolated incidents.
Right. It's that they're connected somehow.
Exactly. It's like they come from these deeper patterns in the relationship.
Like those recurring arguments we were talking about before.
Yes, exactly.
Or those resentments that just keep bubbling up no matter what you do.
It's like they're coming from these deeper, systemic issues in the relationship.
Right. And that's what I want to unpack a bit more.
All right. Yeah, let's do it.
So how can these check-ins help us with those really big challenges, the ones that feel almost impossible to overcome?
Well, I think the key is to remember that check-ins, they're not just for surface level stuff.
Okay, yeah.
They can also be used to address those deeper, more systemic issues.
Right, those patterns we were talking about.
Exactly. And one way to do this is by using those conflict resolution check-ins that we talked about before.
Okay, right, those dedicated times to talk about a specific issue.
Yeah, exactly. But instead of just focusing on the immediate conflict, you can use that time to really explore the underlying patterns.
So, why does this keep happening?
Exactly. What are the root causes of this conflict?
Okay, that makes sense.
And once you start to understand those patterns, you can start to develop strategies for breaking them.
It's like we're not just putting out the fire.
Right.
We're figuring out how to prevent it from happening again.
Exactly. You're getting to the source of the problem.
I love that. Okay, so we're digging deep. We're identifying those patterns. What's next?
Well, next comes the hard part.
Oh, no. What's that?
Actually making changes.
Right. Putting in the work.
Exactly, because once you understand those patterns,
Yeah.
you have to be willing to actually adjust your behavior.
Okay, so it's not enough to just talk about it.
Right. You got to walk the walk.
Make those changes in your actions.
Exactly. And that often requires compromise,
Oh, yeah.
Flexibility from both partners.
Right. Because it's not about one person being right or wrong.
Exactly. It's about finding a solution that works for both of you.
Meeting somewhere in the middle.
Exactly. And again, those check-ins, they can provide that safe space to have those tough conversations.
Right, because those conversations can be hard.
They can. But when you have that foundation of respect and open communication, it makes it so much easier to work through those challenges together.
It's like you're saying, we're a team, we're in this together.
Exactly. Collaboration over competition.
I love that. Okay, but what about those situations where even with the check-ins, we're just not making progress?
Right. Sometimes it feels like you're hitting a wall.
Exactly. What do we do then?
Well, sometimes those conversations, they might reveal that there are some deeper issues at play.
Yeah.
Things that maybe require like professional help.
Right. Like maybe it's time to see a therapist.
Exactly. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's actually a really good sign.
Okay. Why?
Because it means that you're both committed to doing the work, to making the relationship thrive.
You care enough to get help.
Exactly. And sometimes we just can't do it alone. Totally. We need that outside perspective.
Someone who can help us see things more clearly.
Exactly. Because sometimes when you're in the thick of it,
yeah,
it's hard to see the forest for the trees.
It really is.
And a therapist can be like a guide,
okay,
help you find your way back to that healthy path.
And even if we decide to see a therapist, those check-ins are still important, right?
Oh, absolutely. They become like a complement to therapy.
Right. They keep that communication flowing.
Exactly. And they help you practice those new skills that you're learning in therapy.
It's like this powerful combination of support.
Exactly. And as you continue to invest in those check-ins, make those necessary adjustments, your relationship just keeps getting stronger.
More resilient.
Exactly. You're building that foundation that can withstand anything.
A foundation built on trust, intimacy, and open communication.
Beautifully said. And remember, that guide we were talking about, it mentioned some other resources too.
Oh, right. Like Gottman's 7 principles.
Exactly. That's a classic for a reason.
So much good stuff in there.
It really is. And for something a little more like modern, there's apps now.
Oh, right. The relationship apps.
I know, it's pretty amazing.
Technology is wild.
It is. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive on relationship check-ins, what's the biggest takeaway for you?
Honestly, the biggest thing I'm walking away with is that the most important resource we have in our relationships is each other.
Oh, that's so true.
Right. It all comes back to that commitment, that willingness to show up, to listen.
To put in the work, even when it's hard.
Exactly. And even those small, consistent actions.
Like the check-in?
Like the check-ins, they can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. It's like that saying, the greatest things are done by a series of small things brought together.
So true. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap things up.
Okay.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
All right, I like it.
What's one small but meaningful action you can take today to strengthen your relationship?
Until next time, keep those conversations flowing, keep those connections strong, and keep those relationships